Good evening. Tonight, rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. In other news, the Firefly Blue Ghost robotic Artemis lander is about to be unveiled. It's going to launch in mid-January. The National Defense Authorization Act just dropped for the Congress to consider, and there's a surprise package in it for all us fans of new space business. And of course, our main topic tonight, the choice of Jared Isaacman to lead NASA. That's going to lead to a very interesting conversation, I'm sure. And of course, we're going to do our naked pitch for funding for next year. And so from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Good evening, folks. It's so glad to be back after a significant absence. We had some travel overseas I had to do. I had a surgery. I had an illness I had to go through, and something else came in to block me from coming on a couple weeks ago. And so it is great to be back here with all of you. And thank you for tuning in and being with us. And so us, what are we talking about? Who are we? Who am us anyway? What is the Center for Space Commerce and Finance? I always try to lead with this because actually we kind of had a center before the center really had a name. We started with the Space Investment Summits back in 2007, and then we took charge of the New Space Business Plan competition in 2009, and we ended up owning both those things and added the name Center for Space Commerce and Finance to it when we spun out and became our own nonprofit in 2015 and 16 period. So we've been around a while. We've done over 20 New Space Business Plan competitions. We've done over a dozen Space Investment Summits. And this year, we launched our new initiative, which everyone's been very excited about. You'll hear a lot more about this in a minute. Our New Space Micro Grants. And we've been giving away $1,000, no strings, to out of the garage companies who are barely on the back of the envelope that are trying to get started and get a name for themselves and get some attention. And now, as of today, we have given out 4 of those monthly grants. The November grant winner is a company called Orbit Arc, and they are an AI and LiDAR powered solution that are designed to enhance satellite safety by providing real-time collision avoidance, debris detection, and advanced space management. They're basically building. This is really interesting. They're building this ADAR and LiDAR-driven technology as an add-on to a satellite, which will actually equip satellites with an autonomous capability that will engender real-time mapping, debris detection, dynamic maneuvering to avoid collisions, which will increase the lifespan of the satellites. We thought this was fascinating, and we wanted to give them a little boost today. Again, they're based out of India, and the founder, Naman Chola, could not join us tonight, unfortunately, but we're going to have him on our next show, which will be on January 14th, and he can talk all about this. And they're planning on doing a lot with that $1,000 investment. So, but it's India, so $1,000 goes a lot farther. So, good luck to them. God bless them, and we will talk with them in about 4 weeks. So, the shorter news items. NASA put out a thing today, about the Blue Ghost robotic Artemis lander, and I want to actually, before I start on that, I want to bring Michael Lane on here with us. He's my cohort and great longtime space friend, and the producer of this show. And he does a really great job. Thank you, Michael, for doing this and for helping us get this thing started. And welcome to the show. And glad to always see you here at long last. Well, NASA's going to have a news conference.
Can we just pause for a second longer? I want to dig into the Center for Space Commerce and Finance a bit more.
Okay.
I think we need to.
I could have missed.
I think we need to do a shameless plug on a couple things. You talked for a moment about the microgrants. As you said, we've given away four of these $4,000 bills to folks, and I want to encourage people to go to the website. And if you are a small company, an idea stage company, not pre-revenue, not revenue, not seed or Series A, but if you are an idea level company and you think you want to be in the space biz, really want to encourage you to submit for a microgrant. And then if you're in a better spot financially and you really want to help and think what we're doing is pretty cool, why don't you join our community and commit some dollars to this thing? We have a pretty remarkable financial sponsor that has done some really good things for us this year. But it's not endless. It's not endless cash. So we definitely want other folks to get involved with the funding processes here. There's a QR code up here at the top left-hand corner. And I'm going to post a link here in the chat. For people if they want to come in and join us. So that's the first plug. And then the second plug is we have a benefactor who's committed an awful lot of capital, already put in a lot of capital into our nonprofit. And he promised to back our initiatives, right? He's offered to match dollar for dollar up to $50,000 for any funding that comes into the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. So I really want to encourage folks, if it is within there, if it's within your ability and interest, please join us and get involved. And if you want to do something else, get in touch with Tom directly. We're always looking for partners and allies in this.
Absolutely. I'd like to add just one more thing. This is like the reason why we're here, is why we do these things, because we champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable small and medium businesses, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy across the funding spectrum. This is what we've doing. This is what we've been doing for 15 plus years. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at many, many levels of development. So I hope you'll support us this year. If you're on our mailing list already, you're probably already heard from me today. You'll probably hear from me some more on various topics, including this, between now and the end of the year. So look for that, and hope you guys can put something in the tip jar and help us out a lot. Okay.
One last thing, Tom. Yeah. How much money have we given away, no strings attached, during our business plan competitions?
Oh, the business plan competitions as a whole, we've awarded, that's the word I use, over $400,000 from both from grant monies and from corporate sponsorships over the years. And so we're hoping to increase that a lot in 2025. We're planning a very big business plan competition in Sydney this year as part of IAC. And we're hoping our goal is to raise $50,000 prize for that. And so we got some interesting context on that. We're already having those conversations.
Yep. All right.
Might actually surprise you. So when I can announce it. So there we go.
All right. I just want to make sure we got all our housekeeping done. Let's move on to the meat of today's conversation. Where do you want to start?
Okay. Well, again, maybe you can show that link, the NASA news release.
Yep.
Because I thought Firefly built this thing. There's this sub program under Artemis that NASA does. It's called the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, and they contracted with Firefly to build a robotic lander. Well, apparently, they got it built, and it's being put on this rocket real soon now, and it's expected to launch mid-January. And they're going to do they have a news release. They're going to have it's not really a live press conference. It's a virtual press conference. It's like a Zoom call, but it will be a week from today, like 1 p.m. Eastern. They're going to have this news conference. And I thought for those who are interested in these kinds of things, this might be something really worth having a look at. I know I'm going to be there, and I know I might have a question or two for them. So we'll see. Now the next thing, this is a lot of this is Michael's thing. He turned me on to this today. The National Defense Authorization Act just dropped like yesterday for 2025. And there's all sorts of things in there, but there's this little blurb put in there, and one of our own actually helped the ProSpace lobbyist people get this in there, and I call it a surprise package for New Space. Presuming this measure passes, and I will let Michael talk about that more.
Sure. There are many organizations that go up to Capitol Hill once a month, or most likely once a year. Often in the beginning of the year, it's gone through a bunch of different names and iterations. The one I'm most familiar with is March Storm, put on by ProSpace. A couple different space advocacy groups often band together. So that might be the Space Frontier Foundation, the Mars Society is a part of it, the National Space Society is a part of it. And they go up to Capitol Hill and they represent our interests, the interests of the commercial space sector.
I think they still call that March Storm.
Yeah, March Storm. And so one of the things that Tom was talking about is our friends Michael Mealing, who was on I think he was on our very first episode a couple months back, and Sean Mahoney. They spearheaded this thing. Mahoney is the executive director of the Space Frontier Foundation, and Michael Mealing is the founding partner at Space Fund. Wrong guys. Starbridge Capital. We're friends with a lot of venture capital companies in the space sector. Like I gave them the wrong name. Anyway, so Mealing and Mahoney and a bunch of other folks. This stuff doesn't happen with just two people. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of folks that go to Capitol Hill and lobby on behalf of private citizens. This isn't well-funded super PACs that you've heard so much about in the last couple months. This is standard average citizens paying their own way to go to Washington, D.C. and stomp around Capitol Hill. So hats off to those folks. They have been really successful with many projects in the past. And they went and said, look, there is this language in law right now that the FAA monitors a learning period. The FAA is ready to start looking at the commercial launch sector, the whole industry, and starting to put some guidelines, some say barriers, on the industry. And because this is still such a nascent community, a nascent commercialization effort, there has been rules in place that say, look, we're in a learning period. We did the same thing when we launch a new aircraft or a new fleet of aircraft. We want to petition a learning period that says, as industry understands this situation better, we will police ourselves in the beginning, and then once it's more mature, once it's more robust, then Uncle Sam can step in and take on a role. And that original learning period was supposed to end just a few weeks, and now it's going to be extended until 2027. That's still not a long time, but given how fast this industry is moving, that's still probably better than nothing. So, this indemnification was set to expire next year, so and is extended now to 2028. So that's really useful. It's good for the industry. It's good for the sector. We're definitely supportive of it. I think that's kind of all I had to say about it, but I would definitely take a look at some of the work that the Space Frontier Foundation is doing and the Pro Space people, because this is an annual thing that they do. Anything to add, Tom? Have you ever done the March Storm?
I have not done the March Storm in many, many years. It's probably back in the aughts. There are still 2 zeros in the year 2000. It's probably the last time I was involved in something like that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, that story, I'm looking at it now too. Yep. And of course, the predictable comments are the predictable comments. But
the comments in Space News are always worth reading.
Well, especially the last one at the bottom.
The last one at the bottom.
That guy has a really interesting approach. He starts out by saying, why don't we make the learning period permanent?
Yeah.
And he questions the logic of a learning period being as something that people must seek permission for. And so I thought it was an interesting point of view. I don't know how well that's going to fly, but he got a lot of
a lot of plus ups
things, excluding from some people I know. But and he has a point. Space is limitless, so why are we acting like this is a limited thing?
Yeah.
I like him when he says, just go, go, go. The moment that turns into no, 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 we've got a problem.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I guess I understand his logic there, because you're saying if you make people worried all the time, especially investors, that you're going to interfere, without warning on something they've been putting their money in,
right.
They may be less inclined to put their money into it. And so the idea of excessive regulation, or the potential of excessive regulation, really has a chilling effect on new investment coming into an industry and in the companies who are trying to get involved in an industry. Yeah. They think some regulatory overreach is going to start happening any second and without warning, I guess, is the issue we should probably raise in having that discussion. We've had it pretty well for 20 years now, roughly. Mm-hmm. AST was started just the very next year after Virgin Galactic and the winning of the X Prize. So we've had the feel to ourselves. We help write the original law.
Right. Yeah.
And so we can't say we've been innocents in this, hiding on the sidelines. We've been involved in regulatory capture since we helped start that regulatory agency.
Right.
And now they're saying, hey, we want to regulate you some more. We're waiting. No, we're not ready yet.
Not yet.
So you can make that argument too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, someday we got to be ready.
At some point, this industry is mature enough to stand on its own feet and withstand scrutiny. And that definitely is appropriate. I don't agree with the commenter that says we should have a perpetual license and not have to worry about this stuff. I would not feel comfortable getting into an airplane if the FAA was not maintaining a certain level of quality control over flights. Maintenance,
which is fine, I guess, but it does raise the question, and we're raising the question about everything these days,
right? Yeah,
in the last few years, and it's like, well, okay, who are these people? Who's doing the regulating? How are they regulating with a light touch or a heavy-handed touch? And if they're doing a heavy-handed touch, what's the agenda behind that? And and whether those questions are reasonable or not, people are asking them.
Yeah.
And so that's going to happen. Especially, I saw the comment in that article from one of the guys at ASG says it's like, we're just waiting to regulate you. Can't wait. Let's get in there. And just thought, wait a minute. The American electorate just voted in a new administration one of whose stated purpose, among many, is to deregulate things as much as we reasonably can, and in so doing, cut the cost of government so it's not so oppressive on everybody. I remember the last time this administration was in, and they dropped 22 regulations for every one they added. If they keep up at that level, things could straighten around in a lot of areas. I think a lot of areas are overregulated. Is aviation and space overregulated? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
I don't want the Environmental Protection Agency to be able to stop the progress in Boca Chica and SpaceX, but on the other side, there's value in those organizations and their missions, right? So there has to be a fair line that manages the public good for both of those situations, right?
Oh, I get that. I get that entirely. But of course, I think the EPA is a bad example. They're the same people who went after a rancher in Texas for damming up a stream, not a river, a stream that went through his property just temporarily so he could make a little pond, and it kept going after that so he could better water his cattle. And of course, this is an environmental hazard for the whole world. It's going to fall apart if they don't stop him from doing that.
Right.
So we got that problem as well.
Yeah. All right. Next article you want to talk about. What do you want to do?
Okay. Well, I know you had some small things that you had brought up today that you wanted to bring up, and we can talk about that briefly. Yeah. And we can move on from there. We can move on to our big topic of the day.
I've got a bunch. My stuff is a lot of it's bits of mishmash along the way. We've got really want to dig into Isaacman a bit. Let's talk about Isaacman, and then we'll use the other stuff as filler as we go. I definitely have some defense elements that I want to talk about that I think are super important.
Okay.
Let's make sure we're giving Isaacman kind of full attention.
We'll just launch right in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jared Isaacman has been tapped by the incoming Trump administration to lead NASA. Now, interesting choice. I mean, I'm kind of a fanboy of this guy. I think you are too. Mm-hmm. Like he's because he's private sector guy. He made his first money with a payment processor. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah,
it's like what is it with all these guys? They build payment processors and then they want to do something in space. How does that happen?
Right.
That's funny. And then he starts some other company that contracted out to do all sorts of interesting tech stuff. And so he's made a few billion a couple of times, and then he bought 2 flights on from SpaceX, and the most recent one he actually got to do the first private commercial spacewalk.
Yeah, that's a remarkable achievement.
That was a remarkable achievement. And they're testing that spacesuit for the first time. So, what cojones he has, right? And in addition, and we're going to raise this question here in this segment because he's also bought 2 more upcoming flights.
Right, yeah.
Including the first, he must be on the first one with live crew on Starship. So
that was the first of 3, and I think it's really interesting because that team petitioned to go out to the Hubble and do some repairs, and the current NASA administration shot that idea down. They said that the risk is not worth
Right.
the reward was not worth the risk to repair Hubble. And so now there's this guy, he's already contracted to do these other two missions. He's already paid a bucket of money to do these other missions. As the NASA administrator, is he going to put a spacesuit on and go up on the missions he's already paid for? Is he going to be the first NASA administrator that there have been? Charles Bolden and I think one other have been astronauts. So there have been astronauts.
Well, Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson was an astronaut.
Yeah,
technically, he was an astronaut.
So it's not just that he's going to be NASA's first astronaut. That's not true, but he may be the first administrator that goes to space during the administration. That one hasn't gotten talked about. That is a whole new idea that I don't think people are paying attention to. Is he going to do the other two missions?
Right. Is he going to be one of those guys? Is he going to be one of those guys that says, I can't ask anybody else to do something that I can do myself?
Right.
So I'm on the team.
So I think that's
like Captain Kirk always going on the away mission.
Right.
They were constantly arguing Jean-Luc Picard out of it, but Kirk, forget it. He's going.
Right. He's getting out there.
Fuck you, have Khan. I'm out of here.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He starts swinging his fist against Klingons. This is that kind of a guy.
Right.
What's also interesting, I think, he is the first NASA administrator, someone correct me if I'm wrong, who has not at any time in his life been a career politician or climbing the bureaucratic ladder.
Right.
In government.
Yeah.
He's the first NASA administrator who's not one of those guys. He's purely private sector.
The Trump administration definitely broke the mold when they put Bridenstine in place.
Yep.
And your side of the aisle was probably okay with it. My side of the aisle lost our damn minds over Bridenstine, right? And turns out that guy was a great administrator. Hats off to him. He took a really hard job and did a really terrific job at it. Honestly, I was kind of hoping they would tap him again to be administrator second time.
Well, I asked for that. I thought about that too. Mm-hmm. And I know our friend Greg Autry wanted to be tapped. He didn't get tapped either, apparently.
Yeah.
But we'll see if he gets another gig within the structure. He'd be good at whatever he does if they'll pick him to do it. I was looking for the same thing. I like Bridenstine. I've heard him speak personally and shook his hand. I wanted to see him come back, but I mean, he was an interesting choice.
He was a mold-breaking decision then too, right? The last thing the industry wanted was another politician at the helm of anything, and it turned out that he was a really effective leader of going from a congressional role to being the NASA administrator. And it was because he was so successful that it gave the Biden administration kind of leeway to bring Nelson in as administrator. Right?
I was absolutely infuriated with that.
Absolutely.
In charge of the hen house.
Right.
This is what exactly happened. This is the guy, he and Shelby were the ones that saddled us with the Senate launch system.
Right.
You're going to be sure for that 4-year period, that's all we're going to hear about, and that's all they're going to spend money on, and that's all we are going to freaking get.
And it has
look what happened.
A giant catastrophe this whole time.
And speaking of that, that's a little news plug this week.
Right.
Was the flight being pushed back because Orion is having a problem with the heat shield.
Right. Okay, all true. I don't want to get into that topic yet. I want to stick with Isaacman for a second. Because he is inheriting, like, there's a real question whether or not he's going to be able to do anything at all, because he's inheriting a giant rat's nest of interlocking congressional districts that have decades and decades of experience of defending their turf on Capitol Hill. So, like on the one side, it's really exciting that he might be able to do some really cool things. He's definitely a champion of the commercial sector, but is he going to be able to cut through the chaos that the funding program process is?
And that's a good question. And so, because, over the last 50 years plus, NASA has managed to establish itself a facility of some kind doing something, even if a little postage stamp office in every congressional district.
Yeah.
Let that sink in. I mean, they've been working on this for decades, and that's going to be a tough thing to unravel. I don't know how the DOGE committee is going to help with that. They're going to go to every congressional district and say, "Okay, what do you really do here?"
Right.
Because when the DOGE committee came out, and this is relevant. They talked about all the things they want to look at and all the agencies they want to look at and do. NASA guys, so there were some NASA guys put up a thing and said, "Bring it." You get more bang for your buck from this agency than any other agency of government, and we only spend 1/3 of 1% of the federal budget every year.
Right.
Bring it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I thought, well, good for you. Somebody grew a pair, in that group and said, "Okay, let's do this. Let's get real."
Yeah.
Good for them. It'll be a better. You will get a better NASA out of it.
I hope so.
I'm not sure how far we can go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if they're looking for places to cut, NASA is not the first place. Like just across the board, I would be looking at different places. But this claim of I'm going to cut $2 trillion, that's absolutely nonsense. There's absolutely no way they can do that without digging into entitlements. There is no government left if you cut $2 trillion out of the federal government.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we should go Chapter 11 because $1 trillion of that is interest on the national debt. Yeah. Why can't the government go Chapter 11 like everybody else?
Yeah,
like every other business, Chapter 11 or 13 when you're a business.
What's
restructure the debt and pay less interest, or maybe have a moratorium on paying interest on the debt for 5 years.
When America sneezes, the world catches a cold. That's a terrible idea. No one is going to support that. No one.
Either that or have a going out of business sale because because we're only collecting half as much as we spend in taxes.
Yeah,
and no one's going to have their taxes doubled.
Yeah,
and you can tax you could tax the entire. Every rich person in the world, you could tax, everything, and that would run the government for about 6 weeks.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So speaking of rich people running the government, so Isaacman has a $2 billion net worth at 41 years old. So not bad, kiddo. He started his company at 16. I did not know that. I literally learned that a few hours ago. So that's pretty remarkable. This article is pretty funny. I do recommend that people read it. It's very much a paid release. Okay, I want to just be really, really clear and transparent. By the way, we didn't write this. It came out just a few hours ago, and we thought it was worth reading. It's a press release, and that's fine. That's still news. It's pretty funny though. They talk about all his background and the stuff we've already talked about, Polaris Dawn and his other missions. But then it's like, if you're not suitably impressed, then telling you about his ongoing charitable partnerships is simply a waste of time. That guy generated something like $50 million for St. Jude's Research Hospital. That's just one thing that he did amongst this other stuff, which I thought that was pretty neat. This article's talking about some of the things that he's going to have to deal with. We've talked about some of them. This relationship that he has with SpaceX already. All right, I'm just going to put this out. I have no actual knowledge, this is just my gut instinct talking,
Okay.
that Trump asked who should be the administrator. It's not going to be Musk. So Trump's like, okay, I'm just imagining Mar-a-Lago right now. Trump is like, who should be NASA administrator? Because normally NASA administrator is a role that you wait 5, 6, 7, 10 months to fill because there's other stuff more important, right? But I can imagine, strictly my imagination, a conversation at Mar-a-Lago where they're having beers and you know, maybe Musk is a little stoned because we know that's within the realm of the possible.
Yeah.
And they're like, who should be in charge of NASA? And Musk, without even blinking, and again, I'm making up this story, but I imagine without even blinking, is like, it's got to be Isaacman, right?
Well,
Yeah,
you know what? Look, there's always a grain of truth behind all these wild speculative stories.
Yeah.
And because that's one of the points I wanted to make, because he needs, and it even says in the article, he has an opportunity to strengthen reliance on certain industry partners to keep things running smoothly.
Yeah.
But he may be faced with some pushback based on conflict of interest, like we just kind of touched on.
Yeah.
He's already a good friend of Elon. He's already paid to ride on his spacecraft twice. He's paid for 2 more upcoming flights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how independent is he in his decision making? And so that's going to come up, because sometimes I see this stuff sneaking in, and it's all those old buzzwords like public-private partnerships,
Right. Yeah.
or running government like a business. Well, the first guy who mentioned running government like a business was Jimmy Carter.
You're right.
We see what happened there.
Right.
That town ate him alive. No, you don't run government like a business. You run government like a government.
Right.
And they have their own ways of doing things, and we need to streamline those ways. I think Musk and Ramaswamy understand that. And maybe if that's the influence they have on Isaacman, and the only influence they have on Isaacman, we may get somewhere. We may open. I'd love to see NASA more streamlined, keep the budget they have, maybe increase it a little bit, but really go out there and start doing some amazing things like, I don't know, exploring our solar system.
Go out, go back. They're talking about in this article about, he's got choices about what's he going to do with SLS. All right. Well, I'm here to tell you, I think he's going to cut a big chunk of SLS if Congress allows him to.
Yeah.
I don't think Hubble servicing, I think that's going to be a blip on the radar. I think that's something that he personally wants, but he's going to have to deal. He's going to have to deal with China. He's going to have to deal with the moon and somehow bring Artemis, the whole plan of Artemis, which yet does not have a dedicated timeline, a dedicated known budget.
Yep.
How is he going to wrestle with Artemis? And remember, Artemis was a Trump 1 plan. Right. Yeah. So he's got to figure out how to take this thing that is a chaotic jumble and streamline it into something that actually puts boots on the moon. And it damn well better be before China gets boots on the moon, because they're not having the same sort of, internal chaos. So
well, that's why that blurb I saw today about, the Orion is now being put, the thing's being pushed back to 2027 because Orion's having a problem with its heat shield. Oh, for God's sake. How many billions have they spent developing Orion? Yeah, I mean, 20 billion at least developing Orion to date for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Whereas Musk developed the Crew Dragon on less than 1/10 of that budget, and it's already flying.
Yeah.
It's flying fine. In fact, he flew another one up there to rescue the astronauts who got stuck up there because the CST-100 didn't work. And so what do you say about something like that? I think it'll launch again with people on it. It'll go around the moon and come back. So it's really not that launch. That's already in the planning stage. that thing's going to roll out under the pad in another year or two, and it's going to go. The question becomes, will the third launch ever happen? The one that actually puts boots on the ground.
Right. Yeah, and I don't have an answer to that one. I really wish I did.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, the ultimate test of Isaacman and the whole of NASA administration is, can they do that? Can they succeed with that task? And I'm not sure, given what they have right now, if they can. So
Well,
I'm
the
nervous.
answer to me is what we've been saying for 40 years or more is buy the ride.
Yeah,
That's when NASA gets better bang for the buck. We've been seeing buy the ride. Now, for the first 30 years, we said buy the ride. Everybody laughed.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a ride to buy.
Right.
Well, now there's no shortage of rides to buy. And
Right.
so what's your excuse now, for not spending the money much more effectively?
Our episode a month ago, while you were recovering from your surgery, we really dug into just this wide variety of launch vehicles, launch capabilities, where they are. It's not just in the United States anymore. It's all over the world. How many launch platforms are out there, and there's choices. We have choices. We have built a robust launch community in the United States, and we have choices. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting.
Exactly.
All right.
With his background and with the things that he does, especially in the business sector and the things he's done in space, Jared Isaacman has a unique opportunity, because I think NASA could, in fact, learn how to play better with the private sector, the private commercial sector, not just for buying the ride, but for being actually a booster of the private sector, an encourager, a champion of the private sector more than they have been. Like, we champion new space startups as a brick in the foundation of a new space economy. They could do the same at a higher level, and help the whole space sector thrive and prosper by being of help. It's almost like, yeah, I know you're kind of dependent on us all year right now, us and the Defense Department. How can we help you build the better demand-based space economy, and kind of wean yourselves off of that, and and go out there and build great things and make a crap ton of money, and we'll be out there applauding you and cheering you on the whole time. That's what I'd like to see, and that's something of a vision statement that I'd like to see come out of a new, streamlined, improved NASA on Isaacman's watch.
On that note, let's swap over to some of the Defense Department stuff that just came out. Because like, if that's what we're hoping for NASA, that is beginning to happen at Space Force. So some interesting stuff. So we talked a little bit about the National Defense Authorization Act. So that just came out just a few days ago. Has not been approved yet, but it almost certainly is going to be sorted. So there's a couple things that are happening in the DoD space that's, some of it's pretty relevant. There's a couple things I want to point out. The chief scientist of Space Force, I knew the first one. This is the second one. The first one retired. She's out there saying space is cool again. I mean, I think that's automatically good. There was a big event earlier today down in New Mexico. But this is what she's saying, and this is exactly what you were just saying a moment ago. I'm very much into collaboration. We're setting up the Space Futures Command, which will identify and develop field capabilities to protect the space domain. Commercial industry will be a very important piece of that. That's super important, right? I've been on the ground floor of the development of Space Force since its kind of early demise at the end of the Obama administration, and then the kind of surprising way it was announced during the Trump administration. Space Force just celebrated its fifth anniversary just a few days ago, and it's still a small organization. It's still experiencing growing pains, but here the same thing from Dr. Williams. We're not going to succeed without our partnerships, international, academic, and the commercial industry. The commercial industry has a lot of innovations. Thanks to the commercial industry, we have faster timelines. The cost has gone down. The commercial industry brings a lot to the table, making sure we have a great relationship that's beneficial for all of us, can continue to make advances for all of us. So I have seen that language from the first chief scientist, and now it's being repeated by the second chief scientist. And that always makes me feel really good. That gives me a lot of confidence that organization is going to do all the right things. So,
I hope it does. But also another part of me, the original space cynic in me also says that, like, I think behind me on the wall, I should have that poster that Fox Mulder used to have with the flying saucer and said, "I want to believe."
Yeah.
I do. I want to believe. Show me.
Yeah. Well, I think they really are doing it. And then at the same event, General Saltzman, he's the chief of space operations. He's the highest ranking officer, 4-star at Space Force. It's like, space has never been more vital to our nation, our national security, and its prosperity. We are no longer icing on the cake. Our adversaries understand the importance of space power. And this piece right here that just kind of blew me away. And I know it's uncool to read other people's words on the podcast, but I couldn't say this better. So I'm just gonna give this to you. Let it sink in. General Saltzman on the 6 truths. Truth number 1: space matters. If you've been paying attention, you know that space has never been more vital to our national security as well as to our prosperity. At least half of the U.S.'s critical infrastructure depends on space. The Joint Force is sized with the assumption that military space power will be there as its backbone. It makes no sense to train for a, quote, day without space. It's simply inconceivable. Truth number 2: because space matters, we must be prepared to defend it. Throughout history, wherever our national interests collide, competition, crisis, and conflict inevitably follow. Our adversaries understand the importance of space power, and they are ready and willing to take it from us. Truth number 3: because space also matters to our adversaries, we must be ready to deny hostile space power. I'm sure most of the folks in this room understand why we call China our pacing challenge, but let me add a little color to that. Truth number 4: space is a war-fighting domain. Truth 5 builds on this point. The Space Force organizes, trains, and equips, but also conducts warfighting operations as an integral part of the Joint Force. Truth number 6 brings it home. Not only are Guardians warfighters in space, Guardians are the only warfighters with the unique, career-long, specific training, education, and experience required to achieve space superiority. So that is a badass paragraph.
Yeah.
Hats off to General Saltzman. A point of pride, we've actually interviewed General Saltzman on our show about 4 years ago when he was, quote, merely a 3-star general. So now he has become the highest ranking officer in Space Force. And I've really admired all of his public statements. So I just thought that was something that was interesting, important. And it goes back to your comment about what's going to happen with NASA. Are the commercial partners going to be integral to NASA? And I think that General Saltzman is saying that, and he has said in other places, that the commercial sector is a necessary part of the larger Space Force community. So between the comments of the chief scientist and the chief of space operations, I feel pretty confident that Space Force is moving in a way that I think we can all kind of be proud of. And at the end of the day, all the dollars that flow into Space Force and most of the dollars that flow into NASA ultimately move into the private sector. People need to understand that. The hardware that flies, ultimately that money is spent in the private sector somewhere along the way. So the more Space Force gets funding, the more NASA gets funding, the more potential lucrative contracts there are in the space sector. So I think it's an exciting time to see that stuff happening.
Absolutely.
Salzman's a pretty interesting character. I've never met him face to face. It's always been like this because I met him during the COVID days. General Raymond was in charge of Space Force at the time, and Salzman was, one of his senior, like I say, 3-star lieutenant general. But Salzman's role was in the I don't want to call it the research and development side of things. It was operations, but it was more like the cutting edge, right? The future of Space Force. So here in that last article, you've got the chief scientist, the current chief scientist, Dr. Williams, referencing the Space Futures Command, which, by the way, sounds like something out of a comic book or a good sci-fi story. It's Space Futures Command. But they're saying, like, look, we're going to understand capabilities. We're going to understand, new tech and incorporate it as fast as we can. So, yeah, I think that's really interesting. And my hope is that we've always tried really hard to keep the civilian sector, the civil sector of NASA separate from the military elements of space. And I think that they definitely should, but because Space Force is so effectively integrated, the commercial sector, maybe the civil sector of NASA can learn some of the lessons that Space Force has already implemented in working with the commercial sector. I often refer to it as ACDC. It's academic, civil, defense, and commercial. Those are the 4 actors in space.
All right.
And the defense sector has really engaged the commercial sector really effectively. And I'm hoping that that Isaacman is going to see that and apply some of those rules, some of those lessons.
That would be absolutely amazing. I've always liked the idea of the Space Force when they first floated the idea. So I'm hoping it lives up to the challenge and it lives up to kind of our dreams for it as well. I wish they'd use Navy military rankings as opposed to Air Force rankings, but that's a personal choice. Since they stole from the Star Trek logo, when they made their patch, right. Come on, man,
Right.
Just do the rest.
I actually, Major McLean and I wrote a paper to General Raymond specifically when they were asking for advice, input for what should we call ourselves and what should we be doing. And we all voted for the Guardians name. We thought that was a good name. I mean, yes, right. It was, Guardians of the Galaxy had been out for a little while. But in our paper to General Raymond, we asked for warrant officer classifications because there aren't any in the Air Force and they didn't get applied to Space Force. And I still feel very strongly that a warrant officer class should be a part of Space Force, because there are so many demanding technical skills that are different from, I'm a former E4 corporal of Marines, and I know that there are jobs that are good grunt jobs, and then there are jobs that require a very highly skilled professional service. And I think the warrant officer ranks were missed when they first were they copied the Air Force ranking structure. So I think that was an error.
Yep.
I think we wrote a pretty effective paper on why that should happen, but it didn't get adopted. So hopefully.
Okay,
right, we have about 5 minutes left. Do you want to talk about another article, or do you want to wrap it up?
I think we're gonna wind it down. I got a couple things to say. Okay. If you can put up that donation link that I gave you earlier,
yep.
That would be great. Michael, it's been great being with you again. It's fun to be back, and we had a great time, and we're going to keep doing this. So just I want to leave you with this, everyone. Again, there is not going to be a show on December 24th, obviously, because it's Christmas Eve, and our families would kill us if we did that. But we're always on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. The next show will be on January 14th. We will have at least one, if not two, monthly Space Micro Grant winners. We'll be meeting them and talking to them. And so once again, I want to let you know this is our end of the year appeal, and so we're supporting. Help us support great companies. Help us support our micro grant program. You've got multiple ways to do that. You can give us a nice chunk one time. There's also in that page, you have the opportunity to be a subscriber. And now subscribers, you usually do a little extra. Like we've got subscribers right now who are putting in, say, $50 a month for 6 months with a potential renewal. And those people have been very, very helpful in maintaining the programs that we're doing right now. And so you have a choice either way. Our goal is to raise $50,000 at least by the end of March of next year, because I know we're going to get that matched by our benefactor. And if we do at least $50,000, he's willing to extend that program all the way through the end of 2025. And so I'm very keen to get that done. We're off to a decent start, but every little bit helps. I mean, we're also looking for some larger corporations and things like that, but I am an old populist at heart, and I just like getting folks like yourselves who are listening to this to do a little bit here and a little bit there, and it all adds up. And we really appreciate the contribution you make, and so we can make our contribution to make space happen. Again, the new space economy to me is a foundation made of bricks, and each brick is a successful company. And so we're building that, and we could sure use your help. And I thank you in advance for that. And on that note, I am Thomas Andrew Olson from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. Good night, happy holidays, and keep watching the skies.
Bye, y'all.